Someone says something that upsets you, and instead of dealing with your upset, you demand that they change their behavior. And this is how we created a generation that cannot handle, right now, discomfort, disagreements, and just normal human behavior. And I should be the first one to call myself out because for years I was so uncomfortable with bringing up uncomfortable subjects or something that might either upset me or another person. So instead, I was trying to bottle it up inside of me instead of working through it with someone else, because at the end of the day, this is what strengthens someone's relationships. This is what strengthens interpersonal relationships and interactions, not the good times, but the good and the bad times. Hi, I'm Justina, I'm a psychologist, and I'm about to expose to you how society has turned emotional fragility into a superpower and how we are constantly told that we are not responsible for our emotions and everyone else should change around us but us. And this is the bullshit that I can't handle anymore. So let's talk about it. But before we talk about all the triggers of the modern world, about human interactions and how to actually strengthen your relationships, don't forget to click the subscribe button down below. First, we need to call out the fact that we created a society where emotional weakness is being rewarded more than emotional strength. And this is a topic that I talked a little bit more in my previous videos that you can check out here, where I talk that people that are emotionally weaker, may be traumatized or they need care, they get more accommodation. For example, people who can't handle criticism get accommodation, they get attention, they get care. But people who stay calm, they get ignored. Your ancestors survived famines, survived wars, survived actual traumas by building resilience and community too. And you need a therapy the first moment you have some disagreement with another person, or maybe you read a hateful comment on the internet. And I get it, and I talked about it more in that video, so go check it out, that it is so good for economy to create that kind of society, because broken people, damaged people will buy services and products, and people who are healthy emotionally and physically, they don't need to over purchase things that they don't really need. It's really hard to create a purchasing need in them because they know that they are satisfied and they don't need anything else. And that is not good for overconsumption or economy in general. But another thing that deserves its own attention are triggers. Trigger culture creates emotional tyrants that uses trauma to control everyone else around, except themselves. How convenient. In your daily life, you can definitely recall people like that, or at least I can definitely recall people like that, that will say, don't use this word around me. Don't bring up this subject. Don't act this way because it reminds me of my trauma. Or warn me before saying something that might upset me. And the problem with this is that these are demands imposed onto someone else. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to control my emotions and my triggers, I am telling you, don't talk about this because that will trigger me and that will be your fault that you brought this up. And it looks like everyone else is responsible for their emotional state but themselves. It looks like you have to remember every single of their triggers. You need to look out for all the landmines you might by accident stop upon. And then you have to also adjust your behavior because you want to prevent their unwanted reaction. So to me, it looks like I need to control my behavior, and I need to also think about how my behavior is going to impact everyone else in the room, and I'm doing my job and I'm doing their job. And I don't know how about you, but I don't want to do two jobs. at the same time. Like, I would prefer to be then alone and focus on my own behavior, what I can control, rather than making a list. Oh, my friend is being triggered by this, and then my other friend is being triggered by this, and then my boss is being triggered by this. So I suddenly need to follow all those rules because they don't want to be responsible for their reaction, and I have to be responsible for mine, but they don't have to be responsible for their. Those type of people are being stuck in a victim mode, and everyone else is taking a role of a caretaker. And at the end of the day, those type of people suffer the most because their triggers become their prison. They think that they might be protecting themselves. I guess this is the idea that I will just avoid everything that triggers me and upsets me. I will put a wall around me and I will protect myself from that emotional state. But the problem is that that isolation doesn't solve anything. It just postpones until something will break that wall and that person will be exposed to that trauma again. And how you're supposed to know how to handle something or overcome something if you decide to avoid it. If you don't know what to remember from this video, remember this very sentence. When you take responsibility for your triggers, you take back the control over your emotional world. And there is nothing, I guarantee you, there is nothing more empowering than that. Having control over your thoughts, your body, and your mind, and feeling that whatever you do will change the outcome of your whole world. You are the god of your own life and life creation. Instead of saying you're triggering me, you can say it triggers me. Instead of saying don't say that, you can say I need to work on my reaction on that topic. Instead of saying don't be insensitive, you can say I'm having a strong emotional reaction to this thing. It's all about acknowledging what's happening within you, and it triggers you for a reason, not necessarily because somebody said exact this thing. It's more that they say something that literally pushed that button within you. If there wasn't any button to push, you wouldn't be triggered. So it's not necessarily their fault that you have all those buttons to push. When you stop expecting the world to accommodate your triggers, you start learning to manage them. When you stop making other people responsible for your emotions and reactions, you start becoming emotionally resilient. Ultimate truth, no matter how harsh it can be, is that the trauma happened to you, but the healing is up to you. The ultimate truth, no matter how harsh it can be to hear, is that the trauma happened to you, but healing is up to you. And your healing includes learning to respond differently to the situation that used to overwhelm you and trigger you. Since the moment I remember, I would prefer one-to-one meetings because I would get triggered in group settings when everyone tend to interrupt me, and I would get triggered because it would bring my childhood memories of being overlooked. And at some point, instead of demanding everyone following my conversation etiquette that they need to listen to everything that I say, I learned to say, I'm noticing that I feel unheard. Let me try to express myself differently. And that actually got me better results, and people started to listen, and I could actually change my belief that every single time I'm in the group setting, I will feel overlooked. I broke the pattern that was developed in my childhood, and I made it irrelevant to my adult life. Taking responsibility for your triggers doesn't mean blaming yourself for having them, or pretending that they don't exist, or never asking for help, or allowing the actual abuse or harassment. It means recognizing when you're being triggered instead of attacking the trigger source. It means working on your reactions instead of demanding that everyone else should change their behavior. It means getting professional help for severe trauma responses, and it means building emotional resilience instead of emotional fragility. It is all about taking responsibility for your emotions and behaviors. Like, come on, we are adults. Let's stop blaming each other and say, you did this, you did that. Whatever you can do internally, you should do internally instead of telling other people to change. So saying something that I notice I'm having a strong reaction to this, or I need a moment to regulate myself, instead of saying you need to stop doing that because that triggers me. When you stop making your emotional reactions other people's fault, your relationship become about connection, actually closeness, instead of constant trigger management. People don't take responsibility for their actions and their emotional response. Everything from that will go downhill. If everything becomes a trigger, disagreements becomes trauma, discomfort becomes abuse, and suddenly normal social interactions becomes emotional violence. And then everyone around stop expressing themselves authentically, being afraid that they will trigger some reaction in that person. So they are just tiptoeing around that person and cannot be themselves, all the time overthinking whether they're doing something right or wrong, cannot be themselves and cannot express themselves truly. So instead of having a genuine connection with someone, you have a sanitized conversation where everything is strategically overthought just in case. And then another problem that I really often see is that when people believe that other people are responsible for their emotional reactions, they never develop the skill to manage difficult emotions themselves. And the ultimate irony is that the more you try to control your environment to avoid triggers, the more triggered you become by your normal daily life experiences. So after I dropped all the bombs, now it's the biggest realization that will change your life. No one can trigger you without your participation. Your emotional reactions are happening inside of your nervous system, processed by your brain, interpreted by your past experiences. Other people just provide a stimuli. You provide a response. Your inner world belongs to you. Your emotional reactions are your responsibility. Your healing is your choice, and your triggers are teachers, not tyrants. So when you finally stop giving other people the power to control your emotional response and you take responsibility over your emotional state, it's not only liberating, but it's also much easier. Maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable because it's much better to tell another person to change rather than change yourself, but it is much easier to start within yourself rather than expect that 9 billion people will change before you do. Your challenge for today: the next time when you feel triggered, pause for a second. If you need, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this reaction teaching me about something that I need healing for? Where is this reaction coming from? What is triggering inside of me? Instead of focusing on whatever the other person did wrong. And if you feel comfortable, comment down below one thing, one trigger that you're planning to take responsibility for instead of expecting others to manage. And if you like this video and you found it helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you want to be on this journey with me, the journey where we're discovering how to live our life on our own terms, fulfilled and satisfied and empowered. And that everything starts within you. I use psychology and evidence-based practices to help you to heal, but also to live your life to the fullest, because why not? So if that topics are interesting to you, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.